Waitress donates blood to an emergency patient unaware. He's a billionaire and return with a proposal. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to our main character. Meet Jessica, a waitress at a small cafe on the edge of the city. It wasn't glamorous work, but it paid the bills. She wasn't living the dream, but she had a good heart, and that's what made her different. On this particular day, Jessica was working a late shift when she received an unexpected call from the local hospital. They were desperate for blood donations. A patient was in critical need, and the hospital was running low. Without thinking twice, Jessica agreed to help. After all, she didn't have much, but her blood? That was something she could give. She rushed to the hospital, nerves bubbling in her chest as she thought about the man who needed the blood. A patient whose life was hanging by a thread. Jessica didn't know who he was, or the life he led. She didn't care. All she knew was that he needed help, and she was there to provide it. She walked into the donation room, a little nervous, but determined. A nurse guided her to a seat, and Jessica settled in, focusing on the procedure. Her mind wandered for a moment, imagining what her life would be like if she could just catch a break. But she pushed the thought away as the needle pierced her skin, and the blood began to flow. It was the least she could do for a stranger. The process felt slow, but steady. As Jessica closed her eyes, she thought about her bills, her rent, and how she could make it through the month. But even in that moment, she felt like she was doing something right. She was helping someone. What Jessica didn't know was that the man she was donating to was not just any patient. He was Ryan Carter, a billionaire tech CEO who had been in a car accident and was now unconscious in the ICU. His life was hanging by a thread, and the hospital staff were doing everything they could to save him. But it wasn't just the blood that he needed, it was someone's care. Jessica didn't know any of this, of course. She finished her donation, feeling good about what she had done, and headed home to get some sleep. Little did she know, her kindness was about to come full circle in a way she could never have imagined. The next morning, Ryan woke up. He was disoriented at first, his body sore, and his mind cloudy. But as his vision cleared, he felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. He had been saved not just by doctors, but by a stranger. And that stranger was the woman who had donated her blood. He didn't know who she was yet, but he would find out. Ryan made it his mission to find her. Days passed, and once he was well enough to leave the hospital, he had his assistant search for the woman who had helped him. Jessica had no idea that she was being searched for by a billionaire. To her, it was just another day at work, just another life that needed saving. But things were about to change. When Ryan finally found her, it wasn't in the way Jessica expected. She was working her shift at the cafe when a well-dressed man walked in, looking out of place in the small diner. His eyes scanned the room until they landed on her. For a moment, Jessica froze. She had no idea who this man was, but something about him felt different. He walked up to her with a calm, collected demeanor. "Excuse me," he said, his voice smooth. "Are you Jessica?" She looked at him, confused, and nodded. "Yes, I am. How can I help you?" Ryan smiled. "You helped me. I owe you my life." Jessica blinked, trying to process his words. "What? I don't understand." Ryan chuckled softly, shaking his head. "I'm Ryan Carter. I was the patient you donated blood to last week. I wouldn't be here today if it weren't for you." Jessica's mouth went dry as the realization hit her. The man standing before her was a billionaire, a CEO, and he was thanking her for something that seemed so small. Ryan reached into his pocket and pulled out a business card. "I know this is a lot to take in," he said gently, "but I'd like to repay you for what you did. I want to offer you something that could change your life." Jessica was still in shock. She had no idea what he was talking about, but she knew that this wasn't just a coincidence. It was fate. And what happened next was a twist she never saw coming. Ryan wasn't just offering her a job or money. He was offering her something much more valuable, a future she never thought she'd have. I know this may sound unbelievable, but Jessica could hardly believe it herself. The man standing in front of her, the one who had just thanked her for saving his life, wasn't just any man. He was Ryan Carter, the billionaire tech mogul she had never heard of. She was still trying to wrap her head around the fact that he had found her, and now he was standing there in the small cafe, holding out a business card, his eyes filled with sincerity. She stared at the card for a long moment, unsure of what to say or do. Ryan smiled gently, noticing her hesitation. "I know this is a lot to process, Jessica," he said softly, "but I want to offer you something, a way to repay you for what you did for me." Jessica shook her head, still in disbelief. I don't understand," she stammered. "I just did what anyone would do." "No," Ryan corrected gently, his tone soft but firm. "You did something that saved my life. I'm not here to just say thank you. I want to help you." He paused, taking a deep breath. "You see, I've spent my life building this empire. But lately, I've realized there's more to life than just wealth and business. I want to give something back. I want to help people like you." Jessica's eyes widened. "Help people like me?" she repeated, her voice barely a whisper. "You don't even know me." "I know enough," Ryan said, his voice steady. "I know that you gave up something valuable to help a stranger. I want to make sure you never have to worry about bills or struggling again. I want to offer you an opportunity, something that could change your life. It's a job, a good one, with plenty of room for growth." Jessica could hardly breathe. Her mind raced as she thought about the job offers she had gotten before, small, low-paying gigs that barely covered the rent. But this was different. "I don't know what to say," she whispered, still trying to process his words. Ryan reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out another piece of paper, this time an invitation. "I'm hosting an event next week," he said. "A gala, actually. It's for a cause I'm passionate about, and I would love for you to attend. I want you to see the kind of work I do, the kind of people I work with. It's not just about business. It's about making a difference." Jessica blinked. A gala? She had never been to one. She didn't even own a dress that would be appropriate. She barely had enough money for a nice dinner, let alone something as extravagant as a charity event. But Ryan's expression was earnest, and there was something in his eyes that made her hesitate. He wasn't asking for anything in return. He was offering her a chance. She looked down at the card again, the weight of the moment settling in. "I don't know if I belong at something like that," she said quietly. Ryan smiled softly, understanding her doubts. "You belong more than you think," he said. "Trust me, Jessica. This isn't about where you come from. It's about who you are." There was a long silence between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. In fact, for the first time in a long time, Jessica felt like someone truly saw her. Not just the waitress, not just the girl struggling to get by, but the person she was inside. "I'll go," she said finally, her voice steady but filled with uncertainty. "I'll go to your event." Ryan's face lit up with a warm smile, his eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you," he said. "I promise you won't regret it. And who knows, maybe this is the beginning of something amazing for both of us." Jessica nodded, still processing everything. She had no idea what she was getting herself into, but something about Ryan's words, his sincerity, made her feel like this was a turning point. The next few days felt like a whirlwind. She went to a thrift store and bought the best dress she could afford. It wasn't glamorous, but it was the best she had. As she stood in front of the mirror, putting on the dress and fixing her hair, she couldn't help but feel out of place. She wasn't used to this world. She wasn't used to being around people like Ryan, people who had everything and more. But she reminded herself that she wasn't going to the event for the glamour or the wealth. She was going because Ryan had seen something in her, and that was enough for her to take the leap. When the night of the gala arrived, Jessica's nerves were on edge. She walked into the venue, her heels clicking on the marble floor, and immediately felt overwhelmed. The room was filled with elegantly dressed people, all of them chatting and laughing, their faces glowing in the soft lighting. She stood near the entrance, unsure of where to go or what to do. Then, she spotted Ryan across the room. He saw her too, and his face lit up with a genuine smile. He walked toward her, his presence commanding the room without even trying. "Jessica," he said warmly, his voice carrying across the space. "I'm so glad you made it." She smiled nervously, trying to steady her breathing. I didn't know what to expect," she said, looking around at the sea of high-end fashion and expensive decor. "You look amazing," Ryan said, his voice warm and sincere. "But more than that, you belong here. Trust me." Jessica's heart skipped a beat. Those words, those simple words made her feel seen. Not just for what she could offer, but for who she was. And in that moment, she realized that maybe, just maybe, this could be the start of a new chapter in her life. Jessica stood in the grand ballroom, still feeling like a fish out of water. But Ryan's presence beside her made it all a little easier to bear. The soft glow of the chandelier reflected off the crystal glasses on the tables, and the guests, dressed in their finest, mingled with laughter and lively conversation. Jessica had never been in a place like this before, and yet, as Ryan guided her through the crowd, she started to feel a sense of belonging. He introduced her to a few people, some of whom were philanthropic leaders, others successful entrepreneurs. But they all had one thing in common: they admired Ryan. And in turn, Jessica started to feel a quiet pride, knowing she had earned her place here. As they moved through the crowd, Ryan kept a careful eye on Jessica, sensing her nervousness. He smiled reassuringly, his hand resting gently on the small of her back. "You're doing great," he said with a warm smile. Jessica smiled back, but inside, she still felt unsure. She had come from a world of small tips and late-night shifts. This world of power, influence, and money was completely foreign to her. They arrived at the grand stage, where Ryan was scheduled to speak. He greeted a few more people before turning to Jessica, his eyes softening. "I'm glad you came tonight," he said, his voice low and sincere. "I wanted you to see the bigger picture, the work we're doing, the lives we're trying to change. It's about more than just the business. It's about making a real difference." Jessica looked at him, still processing his words. It was one thing to hear about charity work, to see it on television. But being here, in this room, surrounded by people who had the means to change lives, it felt overwhelming. Ryan gave her a moment to take it all in before the lights dimmed, signaling the start of the event. He excused himself briefly to take the stage, and Jessica found herself alone for the first time that evening. The room grew quiet as Ryan took the microphone, his voice filling the space with confidence and authority. "Good evening," he began, his voice steady and strong. "Tonight, we gather not only to celebrate our success, but to remember why we do what we do. We're here because there are still people who need our help. There are still lives we can change." Jessica watched from the sidelines, captivated by the way Ryan spoke. It was clear he believed in what he was doing, and that belief seemed to resonate with everyone in the room. His words weren't just about business, they were about people, about making a tangible impact on the world. As the evening progressed, Ryan made his way back to Jessica, who was still taking everything in. "So, what do you think?" he asked with a smile, his eyes searching hers for an answer. "I never knew it could be like this," Jessica replied, her voice filled with awe. "It's bigger than I imagined," Ryan nodded, his expression thoughtful. "It's not just about money or influence. It's about finding purpose, about using what you have to make the world better." Jessica looked around the room, seeing the wealth and power in the people surrounding her. But for the first time, she didn't feel out of place. It was as if Ryan had opened a door to a new world for her, a world where she could be more than just a waitress, more than just someone scraping by. She could make a difference too. As the night went on, Jessica and Ryan continued to talk, and she felt her uncertainty slowly begin to fade. It was clear that Ryan wasn't just offering her a job or a lifestyle. He was offering her a chance to change her life. But as the evening drew to a close, Jessica couldn't help but wonder if she was ready for the kind of life Ryan was offering. She had always worked hard, never expecting anything in return. But now, this world of luxury, of influence, could she really fit in? Could she really embrace this new path? As she pondered, Ryan returned to her side, his gaze soft yet confident. "Jessica," he said, his tone serious, "I know this is a lot to take in, but I want you to know something. This isn't just about what I can offer you. It's about what you can offer the world. You have something special. You have a heart that cares, and that's more important than anything else." Jessica felt her heart flutter in her chest at his words. She had always believed in kindness, in helping others. But to hear Ryan say that, to have him believe in her, it meant more than she could express. "Thank you," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know if I'm ready for all of this, but I want to try. I want to see where this takes me." Ryan smiled, his eyes warm with approval. "That's all I ask. Take it one step at a time. You don't have to have it all figured out right now." As they left the event together, the night air cool against their skin, Jessica felt something shift inside her. She wasn't sure where this new path would take her, but she knew one thing for sure: this was just the beginning. And for the first time in a long time, she felt a sense of hope, a sense that maybe, just maybe, she was on the verge of something extraordinary. Jessica's heart raced as she stepped into the grand office building, the polished glass doors towering above her. The world she had entered that night was no longer a distant dream. It was real. She was about to start her first day at Carter Enterprises, the company Ryan had introduced her to just days ago. Despite her nerves, she couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement. This was the opportunity of a lifetime, and for the first time in a long time, she felt like she belonged. Ryan had promised her a chance to prove herself, and she was determined to make the most of it. Her first task was simple: meet her new colleagues and get a feel for the company's culture. The building itself was a marvel, with sleek modern architecture and walls lined with art that gave the place a sophisticated, almost intimidating feel. As she made her way to the elevator, Jessica's mind raced with 1,000 thoughts. What if she wasn't cut out for this world? What if she didn't belong here? But then she remembered Ryan's words. "It's not about where you come from, Jessica. It's about who you are." The elevator dinged as it reached the top floor, and Jessica stepped out into the vast open space of the executive offices. She was greeted by Claire, Ryan's assistant, who had a warm smile on her face. "Jessica, it's so nice to meet you. Ryan's been talking about you all week," Claire said, leading her to a small conference room where she would meet the team. As she entered, Jessica was introduced to a group of professionals who looked so polished and confident that she almost felt out of place. But when they smiled at her and welcomed her, the tension in her chest began to ease. The next few weeks flew by in a blur of meetings, emails, and training sessions. Jessica worked hard, proving to everyone that she wasn't just some waitress who had been given a lucky break. She threw herself into the work, absorbing everything she could, and slowly but surely, she began to gain the respect of her colleagues. As she settled into her new role, Ryan continued to check in on her, offering guidance and support. They met for lunch a few times, and she could tell he was genuinely interested in her progress. "You're doing great, Jessica," Ryan said one afternoon as they sat together in a quiet cafe. "I knew I saw something in you." Jessica smiled, but inside, she still felt like an imposter. She had come so far, but she couldn't shake the feeling that she was just pretending to be someone she wasn't. But Ryan didn't seem to notice her doubts. He was always encouraging, always believing in her even when she didn't believe in herself. One evening, after a particularly grueling day at the office, Jessica found herself sitting on a bench outside, staring at the city skyline. The weight of everything she had been through over the past few weeks pressed down on her. She was exhausted, emotionally and physically drained. Just as she was about to get up and head home, she heard footsteps approaching. She turned to find Ryan standing there, his expression soft and understanding. "Long day?" he asked, sitting down beside her. "Yeah, just a little overwhelmed, I guess," Jessica replied, looking out at the lights twinkling in the distance. Ryan nodded, his gaze thoughtful. "I know how you feel," he said. "When I started out, I was just like you, unsure of myself, wondering if I really belonged. But over time, I learned something important." Jessica turned to face him, intrigued. "What's that?" she asked. Ryan looked at her with a smile. "You don't have to be anyone else. Just be yourself. You have something special, Jessica, and I don't want you to forget that." His words struck a chord deep inside her. For the first time in a long time, Jessica allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, she was enough. As she walked home that night, she felt a sense of peace settle over her. She didn't have all the answers, and she certainly wasn't perfect, but she was starting to understand what Ryan had meant. This wasn't just about the job, or the money, or the fancy events. It was about her finding her place in the world and learning to believe in herself. A few days later, Ryan invited Jessica to a charity event he was hosting. It was a small gathering, much more intimate than the gala she had attended. As they arrived, Jessica felt a familiar sense of nervousness creep in. But as she looked around at the people gathered, she realized that this was where she was meant to be. She was no longer the girl who was just getting by. She was someone with a purpose, someone who had the potential to make a real difference. As the evening went on, Ryan pulled her aside. "I've been thinking about you," he said quietly. "I know things have been moving fast, but I want to offer you something more. I want you to be a part of something bigger than yourself. I want you to help lead a new initiative within the company, a project that focuses on giving back to the community." Jessica's heart raced at the thought. This was it, the moment she had been waiting for. I don't know what to say," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Ryan smiled warmly. "You don't have to say anything yet, just think about it, but I know you're the right person for the job." In that moment, everything fell into place. Jessica realized that this was no longer about the fear of not fitting in. It was about embracing the person she had become. She wasn't just a waitress anymore. She was someone with the power to change lives, including her own. Jessica stood on the rooftop, looking out over the city that now felt like a part of her. The lights twinkled below, reflecting the hopes and dreams she had started to build. The wind was gentle against her skin, but her heart was racing. This moment, the one she had been waiting for, was finally here. Ryan had made her an offer she couldn't refuse: the chance to lead a community-focused initiative at Carter Enterprises. It was a huge opportunity, one that could change the direction of her life. But she wasn't just excited, she was scared. For the first time in a long while, Jessica felt like she was standing at the edge of something monumental. Could she really do this? Could she take the leap and embrace this new version of herself? She thought about the old Jessica, the one who had been working late-night shifts, just trying to make ends meet. That person felt so far away now, as if she had lived in a completely different world. The more she thought about it, the more she realized how far she had come. Just a few months ago, she never would have imagined that she would be here, on top of a building, preparing to make a real difference in the world. But it wasn't just about the job or the money, it was about the purpose. The work she would be doing was more than just a career change. It was a chance to leave a legacy, to help those who needed it most, just as she had once done when she gave blood to save a life. She closed her eyes for a moment, taking a deep breath, and when she opened them, Ryan was standing beside her, his presence as calm and steady as always. He had been with her through every step of this journey, believing in her when she doubted herself. "You're thinking too much," he said softly, sensing her internal struggle. "You're ready for this, Jessica. I know it." His words were exactly what she needed to hear. For the first time in a long time, Jessica didn't feel like an imposter. She felt like she had found her place, like this was where she was always meant to be. "I'm scared," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "What if I fail? What if I can't live up to everyone's expectations?" Ryan smiled, a reassuring smile that made Jessica's heart flutter. "Failure is part of the journey. You won't fail. Not because you're perfect, but because you care. That's what matters the most." Jessica looked at him, his words sinking in. Ryan wasn't just offering her a job. He was offering her the opportunity to grow, to fail and try again, and most importantly, to make a real impact. She realized then that she wasn't doing this for anyone else. She was doing it for herself, and for the first time in a long time, she felt a sense of peace. She didn't need to have all the answers right now. She just needed to take the first step, and the rest would follow. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of meetings, brainstorming sessions, and planning. Jessica threw herself into the project, pouring her heart and soul into every detail. She was determined to make it a success, not just for Ryan or the company, but for herself and the people who would benefit from the initiative. As the project began to take shape, Jessica started to feel a shift in herself. She was no longer the girl who had to struggle to make ends meet. She was now a leader, someone who could make a difference. She had found her voice, her purpose, and she wasn't going to let fear hold her back. One evening, as she sat at her desk, reviewing the final proposal for the initiative, Ryan walked into her office. He leaned against the doorframe, watching her with a smile. "How's it going?" he asked. "It's going great," Jessica replied, looking up from her work. I think we're ready to launch. Ryan's smile grew wider, and he walked over to her, placing a hand on her shoulder. I knew you had it in you, he said proudly. You've come a long way, Jessica. She smiled, feeling a sense of pride swell in her chest. It wasn't just about the work. It was about everything she had overcome to get to this point. Thank you, she said quietly, her voice filled with gratitude. Ryan looked at her with a glint of pride in his eyes. You did all the hard work. I just gave you the opportunity. Jessica looked at him, her heart swelling with emotion. She knew that without him, none of this would have been possible. But it was her own determination and strength that had brought her this far. As the initiative launched and began to gain momentum, Jessica's confidence continued to grow. She found herself stepping into new roles, taking on challenges she never would have imagined a few months ago. And as she watched the positive impact the project was having on the community, she realized something. This was just the beginning. There was so much more she wanted to do, so many more people she wanted to help. The work she was doing now was just the first step toward a future filled with purpose, fulfillment, and, most importantly, a sense of belonging. She had found her place, and it was exactly where she was supposed to be. As Jessica looked out over the city that night, she felt a sense of peace and excitement for the future. She had come so far, and she knew that no matter where the road ahead took her, she was ready for whatever came next. The days turned into weeks, and Jessica continued to pour her heart into the community project she had been given the responsibility for. She was no longer just an employee, she was a leader, someone who was making a real difference. The initiative was gaining traction, and the impact it was having on the community was beyond what she had imagined. People were reaching out to her, thanking her for the help they had received, and Jessica could see the change she was helping create. But with all this success came new challenges, and Jessica wasn't sure if she was ready for them. She had always been the one who had to fight for what she wanted, the one who had to make ends meet, and now, she found herself leading something much bigger than herself. She wasn't sure if she was equipped to handle everything. Late one night, after a long day of meetings and planning, Jessica sat in her office, staring at her computer screen. The project was running smoothly, but there were still so many loose ends to tie up, and she felt overwhelmed by the weight of it all. Just as she was about to close her laptop, a knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. "Come in," she called out, not looking up from the screen. Ryan walked in, his usual calm presence filling the room. He leaned against the doorframe, looking at her with a concerned expression. "Long day?" he asked softly, sensing her exhaustion. Jessica looked up at him, her eyes tired but determined. "Yeah, just trying to tie up some loose ends. It's all coming together, but there's still so much to do." Ryan walked over to her desk, pulling up a chair and sitting down across from her. "You're doing great, Jessica. I know it's a lot, but you're exactly where you need to be. I believe in you." Jessica smiled weakly, but inside, she felt a wave of doubt. "I don't know. Sometimes it feels like I'm not ready for all of this. It's so much bigger than anything I've ever done." Ryan leaned forward, looking at her with sincerity in his eyes. "That's how it always feels when you're doing something new, something important. But you're not alone in this. You've built a great team, and they're all behind you. You have the support you need." Jessica swallowed, trying to push down the doubts swirling in her mind. "But what if I mess it all up? What if I fail?" Ryan shook his head, his expression soft but firm. "Failure is just part of the journey, Jessica. It's how we learn, how we grow. I've failed more times than I can count, but each time, it taught me something new. You're learning too, and you're already doing incredible things." His words were exactly what she needed to hear, but even as they comforted her, she couldn't shake the fear that had settled in her chest. What if he was wrong? What if she wasn't cut out for this? Ryan seemed to sense her uncertainty. "Jessica," he said gently, "I know you're scared, but I also know that you have something special. You're not here by chance. You've earned your place, and you're going to keep earning it. You have a vision, and that's something that not everyone has." Jessica looked at him, feeling a mix of gratitude and fear. She had come so far, but she was still terrified of what lay ahead. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice filled with emotion. "I don't know what I would have done without you. You've believed in me when I didn't believe in myself." Ryan smiled, his eyes soft. "That's what I'm here for. I know what you're capable of. Jessica. Don't ever forget that. He stood up, giving her a reassuring nod. Now, go home. Get some rest. Tomorrow is a new day, and we'll take it one step at a time. Jessica watched him leave the room, feeling a sense of calm wash over her. She knew that Ryan had given her more than just a job. He had given her belief in herself, and that was something she had never had before. As she sat in the quiet of her office, she took a deep breath, letting the weight of the day lift from her shoulders. She wasn't sure what the future held, but for the first time, she wasn't afraid. She was ready. The next morning, Jessica walked into the office with renewed energy. She was determined to make the most of this opportunity, to show not only Ryan but also herself that she was capable of leading this initiative to success. She had already come so far, and she wasn't going to let fear stop her now. The day was filled with meetings, progress reports, and more planning, but as the afternoon wore on, Jessica felt a sense of satisfaction. She was doing it, she was making it work. By the end of the week, the initiative had reached a major milestone. The first round of funding had been secured, and the team was already making plans for the next steps. Jessica stood in front of the team, feeling a swell of pride as they all looked to her for guidance. "We're just getting started," she said, her voice filled with conviction. "This is going to make a real difference, and I couldn't have done it without all of you." As she looked around the room at the faces of her colleagues, Jessica realized something. She was no longer just the girl who had been given a chance. She was a leader, and this was her time. The days that followed were a blur of meetings, calls, and excitement, but also pressure. Jessica could feel the weight of the responsibility on her shoulders as she led the team through the next phases of the initiative. She had always been someone who thrived on hard work, but this was different. This was bigger than anything she had ever imagined. As the team grew more confident and the project began to show real progress, Jessica couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. It wasn't the work itself. The work was fulfilling, and she loved every minute of it. It wasn't even the people she worked with. They were all talented, driven, and passionate about making a difference. What Jessica found herself missing was something more personal, something that had always been a constant in her life, but was now distant. Her family. She hadn't seen her mother in weeks, hadn't visited the small town she grew up in, and had barely kept in touch with her friends. It was as if the world she had once known was slipping away, replaced by this fast-paced, high-stakes new reality. One evening, after another long day at the office, Jessica sat on the balcony of her apartment, looking out over the city. The lights twinkled below her, the same way they had when she first moved to this city, so full of dreams and hope. She closed her eyes for a moment, allowing herself to breathe deeply. The sound of her phone ringing broke the silence, and she picked it up, glancing at the screen. It was her mother. "Hi, Mom," she answered, a smile tugging at her lips despite the exhaustion. "How are you, sweetheart?" Her mother's voice came through, warm and comforting. "I'm good, just busy with work," Jessica replied. "I haven't been able to visit lately, but I promise I'll come soon." Her mother's voice softened, and there was a pause on the other end of the line. "I miss you, Jess," she said quietly. "I know you're doing great things, but don't forget to take care of yourself, okay? You're still my little girl." Jessica felt a lump form in her throat. The truth was, she had been so caught up in everything that she hadn't given herself the time to slow down and enjoy the simple things. She hadn't called her friends in weeks or even checked in with her mother as much as she should have. In the rush to prove herself, she had lost sight of what truly mattered. "I miss you too, Mom," Jessica said, her voice thick with emotion. "I promise I'll make time for myself. I just got caught up in everything." "You're doing wonderful, sweetheart," her mom replied. "But remember, life is about balance. You can't pour from an empty cup." Jessica nodded, though her mother couldn't see her. Her words struck a chord deep inside her. It was time to find that balance, to reconnect with the people who truly mattered. "I'll come visit this weekend," Jessica promised. "We can have dinner, just like old times." The call ended, and Jessica sat in the quiet of her apartment, her heart heavy, but also filled with a sense of clarity. She had been so focused on proving herself, on doing more, that she had forgotten to enjoy the present and the relationships that had always been there for her. It was time to change that. The next few days were busy, as always, but Jessica made an effort to set boundaries and take small breaks. She reached out to a few old friends, reconnected with her mom, and even took a day off to recharge. When the weekend came, she headed home to visit her family. As she sat around the dinner table with her mother, her father, and her siblings, Jessica realized just how much she had missed this being with people who loved her unconditionally, who didn't care about her job title or how successful she had become. They cared about her, the person she was. After dinner, as they sat on the porch, her mother turned to her with a smile. "You've changed, Jess," she said softly, "but I can see the same kind-hearted girl in you. I'm proud of you, no matter what." Jessica's heart swelled with warmth. Her mother's words reminded her of who she was at her core, the girl who had always cared for others, who had dreamed big but never lost sight of what mattered. "Thanks, Mom," she said, her voice full of gratitude. "I needed to hear that." As the weekend came to a close and Jessica headed back to the city, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. She had always known the importance of work, but now she understood the value of balance, of making time for herself and the people who mattered most. She was still determined to make a difference, but she was going to do it on her own terms by staying true to who she was and remembering the things that grounded her. The next day at work, Jessica stood in front of her team, ready to tackle the next challenge. She was no longer just a woman in a new world trying to prove herself. She was someone who had learned to embrace her journey, to accept her fears, and to take pride in every step, big or small. "We've come a long way," she said, looking at her team with confidence. "And we're just getting started. Let's continue to make a difference, together." And with that, Jessica knew that this was just the beginning of something even bigger than she had imagined. As the months passed, Jessica found herself becoming more comfortable in her new role. She had made peace with the challenges that had once seemed insurmountable, and the initiative she was leading had started to gain real traction. The impact of their work was visible, with more and more communities benefiting from their efforts. But it wasn't just the external success that mattered to Jessica, it was the way she had changed, how she had grown into the person she always knew she could be. Her confidence had soared, and her ability to lead and inspire her team became evident. However, despite all the progress, there was still one thing that nagged at her heart: her connection with Ryan. Their bond had deepened over the months, and while they worked closely together, Jessica couldn't help but wonder if there was something more between them. Ryan had always been supportive, encouraging her every step of the way, but he was also distant, keeping his personal life private. There were moments when Jessica caught him, looking at her in a way that made her heart race, but he never spoke of it. One evening, after a long day of meetings and planning, Jessica found herself standing in the office, staring out the window, lost in thought. She had just finalized the details for the next phase of the project and was feeling a sense of accomplishment, but at the same time, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. Just as she was about to head out, Ryan walked in, his presence as calm and commanding as ever. He smiled when he saw her, but there was a hint of something more in his eyes, something Jessica had learned to recognize but never fully understood. "You've been working hard," Ryan said, his voice gentle. "I'm proud of you." Jessica turned to face him, her heart skipping a beat. "Thank you," she said, her voice soft. "It's been a lot, but it's worth it." Ryan nodded, walking toward her. There was a long pause, the kind of silence that seemed to speak volumes. Finally, he spoke again, his tone serious. "Jessica, there's something I've been meaning to talk to you about." Jessica's heart skipped a beat. She could sense the shift in his tone, and she had a feeling she knew where this was going. "What is it?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Ryan took a deep breath and met her gaze. "I've been thinking a lot about us, about you and me," he said, his voice low. "And I realize that I've been holding back, that I've kept you at arm's length for far too long. The truth is, I'm not just proud of you as a colleague or a leader. I'm proud of you as a person. And more than that, I care about you." Jessica's breath caught in her throat. For a moment, she couldn't find the words. It was like everything she had been feeling had suddenly come to the surface, and she didn't know how to process it. Ryan stepped closer, his eyes never leaving hers. "I know this isn't easy," he said softly, "but I don't want to keep pretending that I don't feel this way." Jessica could feel her heart pounding in her chest. She had always respected Ryan, admired him even, but now she realized that there was something deeper there, something she had tried to ignore. "Ryan," she whispered, her voice barely above a breath. I care about you too." The words felt like a weight lifted off her shoulders. She had been holding them in for so long, unsure of how to express what she felt. But now that they were out in the open, everything seemed to make sense. Ryan smiled, a warm, genuine smile that made Jessica's heart flutter. "I'm glad you feel that way," he said, his voice filled with relief. "I've wanted to tell you for a while, but I didn't want to complicate things, especially with everything going on. But now, I realize that I've been holding back something that's been growing inside me for months." There was a long moment of silence, and for the first time in a long time, Jessica felt like she was standing on the edge of something real, something lasting. Ryan reached for her hand, his touch gentle but firm. "I want to be with you, Jessica," he said quietly. "I don't want to hide how I feel anymore." Jessica looked at him, her mind racing, but her heart was clear. She knew that this was the right moment, the right choice. "I want that too," she said softly, a smile breaking across her face. "I think we've both been afraid of what this could mean, but I'm ready to see where it goes." Ryan smiled, his eyes lighting up with a mix of joy and relief. "Me too," he whispered, leaning in closer. In that moment, Jessica realized that everything had led her to this point, not just the success of the initiative, not just the work she had put into her career, but the connection she had with Ryan. It was the beginning of a new chapter, one that wasn't just about professional growth, but about personal growth as well. Together, they had built something amazing, and now they had the chance to build something even more special, a life, together. The future seemed bright, and for the first time, Jessica felt like she was exactly where she was meant to be. As the weeks passed, Jessica and Ryan's relationship deepened. They worked side by side, not just as colleagues, but as partners. The professional connection they shared was now intertwined with something more personal, something real. Jessica found herself not only thriving in her role, but also discovering a new side of herself. She wasn't just the woman who had to struggle and fight for every opportunity. She was someone who could lead with confidence, inspire others, and build a future filled with love and purpose. The initiative she had started was growing stronger with each passing day. The community outreach was making an undeniable impact, and the success of the project was beginning to reach far beyond their expectations. But as the project grew, so did Jessica's role. She was no longer just managing a team, she was becoming a leader in the truest sense of the word. Ryan was always there by her side, offering support, guidance, and love, but he also trusted her to make the tough decisions. They were a team in every sense of the word, and it was clear to everyone around them that they made an incredible pair. One afternoon, as they sat together reviewing a new proposal for the next phase of the project, Ryan looked at Jessica with a smile that made her heart skip a beat. "You've come a long way," he said, his voice filled with pride. "I always knew you had it in you." Jessica met his gaze, her heart full. "I couldn't have done it without you," she replied. "You believed in me when I didn't believe in myself." Ryan reached across the table, taking her hand in his. "You've always had it within you, Jessica," he said softly. "I'm just glad I got to be a part of your journey." As they sat there, the weight of everything they had built together settling between them, Jessica couldn't help but feel a sense of peace. She had come so far further than she ever imagined possible. And as much as she had achieved professionally, it was the personal growth she was most proud of. The woman who had once doubted herself, who had struggled with fear and insecurity, had now become someone who believed in herself. And the man beside her had been there, encouraging her every step of the way. It was in that moment that Jessica realized something even more important than the work they were doing, or the success they had achieved. What truly mattered was the connection they had, the love that had blossomed between them, the respect they had for each other, and the shared vision they both held for the future. Ryan stood up, walking over to where Jessica sat. He held out his hand, and with a warm smile, he said, "Let's take a break. We've earned it." Jessica smiled, her heart swelling. "I couldn't agree more." As they walked out of the office, hand in hand, Jessica couldn't help but feel like the luckiest woman in the world. Not because of all the success, not because of the career she had built or the things she had achieved, but because she had found something far more valuable, someone who truly cared about her, someone who saw her for who she was, and someone who had been there for her every step of the way. The future was bright, and for the first time in a long time, Jessica felt a sense of calm settle in her heart. She knew that whatever came next, they would face it together. And with that thought, she looked up at Ryan, his hand firmly in hers, and felt a surge of excitement for the journey ahead. This was just the beginning of their story, a story they would continue to write together, one chapter at a time. In this inspiring journey of transformation, a waitress's life takes a turn when she unexpectedly helps a man in need, not knowing he is a billionaire. As their paths cross again, this millionaire story unfolds, revealing the power of kindness and how it can change lives. From humble beginnings to professional success, Jessica learns valuable lessons about confidence, leadership, and personal growth. Along the way, she navigates the complexities of relationships, discovering that love and career success can go hand in hand. Through her bond with a successful millionaire, Jessica gains the belief in herself that she had long lacked. This millionaire story shows that it's not just about wealth, but about finding purpose and connection with others. As Jessica steps into a leadership role, she finds that her true strength lies not just in her professional accomplishments, but in her personal journey. The story touches on themes of growth, challenges, and the importance of love, making it a perfect addition to the world of millionaire stories. As their relationship evolves, Jessica and Ryan create a future full of promise, reminding us that kindness and belief in others can lead to extraordinary outcomes. This story is a testament to how sometimes a single act of kindness can lead to a life-changing journey, as seen in many millionaire stories that inspire us all.